Hello students, I welcome you all to this session. Let's get started with our new unit entitled The Voter, written by Chinua Achebe. Students, before having gone through with the main script of this present unit, let's make our way forward onto the biography of the author of this unit. Taking an account of the biography of the author of this unit, what we see is that Chinua Achebe was born in the year of 1930 and his last ritual rites were performed in the year of 2013. This period, beginning from 1930 to 2013, was his living period during which he lived his life. He was the native or indigenous person of Nigeria, which is situated in the continent of Africa. Our Chinua Achebe took many professions throughout his career. In the initial stages of his career, we can see Chinua Achebe as a novelist. In his later years, he became a remarkable poet as well. When he started writing or producing poems, they were read out by his readers and he was greatly acclaimed by his readers all around him. And he became a successful professor as well in his career. But the name of the university which our Chinua Achebe taught his students in is not given here, and critic as well. He went on criticizing some literary works of other authors in his career. This is how our Chinua Achebe took many professions on him. Coming on to the novels composed by our Chinua Achebe, what do we get to see is that his novels merely focus on the traditions and rituals of Igbo society. Here, students, you need to understand a society or a community, we can say, that is named as Igbo. You people read when you were a 10th standard students all about the tribal people of our India. Even today, we can see some people residing at the bottom of hills and mountains at northern states of India, like Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram, Tripura, and Arunachal Pradesh. They were named, as I told you people earlier, they were Naga, Kodava, Munda. These people are the tribal people of our India. In terms of Africa, there was a community called it as Igbo. Igbo is a community under which we could notice number of people living in it. Achebe's novels, which were composed by him, merely gave a light, a spotlight, we can say, a spotlight on this community, especially on their traditions and rituals, which were followed by these Igbo people. The effect of Christian influences. I will tell you people one thing. In our subcontinent of India, we saw the Europeans, especially British, they came into presence in our India around 1600. That was the first time they put their foot on the soil of our India with the intent of establishing their trade and market. After finding their root in our India, they started establishing their own colonies in our India. Not only India was the country which was under the control of the Europeans. Uh, Many countries all around the world were the victims of these Europeans. Europeans are nothing but the Christians. These Christians made their mark, they left their mark in the soil of our India. When they came into existence on the soil of our India, they started exploiting our traditions and rituals. They established their own rules. They had their own policy, divide and rule. They pushed our domestic rulers aside and started establishing their own centers in the sea routes, especially in the sea routes of our India. They established their own trading centers. This is how they were dominant over Indians. Uh, Taking consideration of our India, they left their own impact on us. Even today, we are still suffering from the impact of Christians. Their education, that is English, their the wearing of the style of the clothes and the food style that we adopted in us, and the mannerism that we have cultivated today, all these were given by these Christians. Though we are away from the exploitation, bodily exploitation from those British, we are being still haunted by the British emotionally and psychologically as well. In this way, in the similar manner, these Europeans or Christians, we can say, had gone to the African land as well. They found their way in the Nigerian country. They made their mark on the soil of the Africa as well. The entire Africa was suffered a lot under the control of these Europeans, so that they left their own influences over the entire African people, and the clash of Western and traditional African values during and after the colonial era. I will tell you people what colonialism is. Colonialism, or we can say colonial, is a concept in which we can get to see a powerful country which has a mighty power in its hand exploit the weaker country, only to use the available sources in that weaker country. This strong country makes use of all the available sources that is found in that weaker country, with the intention of having these resourceful things in that weaker country. These colonies are made. I will give people an instance over here. USA is made of 13 colonies established by the Europeans. Likewise, these Europeans, or we can say Christians, made many colonies all across Africa. But today they are away from Africa. Before this colonialism, these Europeans Europeans had left their own mark on the lands of Africans, and these are the Westerners. These people, Europeans, are the Westerners. There was a clash in between the Westerners and the traditional African values. There are certain values among the people of Africans, but the people of Africa were in dilemma to get adopted their own values because of the impact and influence of the Europeans. Why? Because is that, as I told you people earlier, these Europeans left their own values and traditions. As I told you earlier, we were left with the system of education of English and their food habit, wearing of clothes, as we adopted in us. Those African people to adopted these kinds of mannerisms in them, so that there was a clash in between westerner style of westerners values and the African values. These people were in dilemma to adopt the styles and the values in between western and their traditional values. It happened during before the colonial era and even after the colonial era. Though the Europeans were are too away from the lands of Africa, even today those people are suffering a lot due to the existence of the values of westerners that they left in the land of Africa. Is a style, especially the writing style of our Chinua Achebe, relies, or we can say depends heavily on the Igbo oral tradition. I told you people earlier that these people, especially from the community of Igbo, they have adopted certain values in them. They have followed traditions and rituals in them. The writing style of our Chinua Achebe completely depends upon the traditions of Igbo people. Much of his writing completely depends on the Igbo tradition. Whatever he has composed throughout his career, all that is dependent on this Igbo tradition and combines straightforward narration with representation of folk stories, proverbs, and oratory. And here, taking a consideration of his narration, what do we get to see is that he has adopted a straightforward narration in his writing. He doesn't have the mannerism of hide and seek. He doesn't do that in his career. He goes on narrating in his literary works whatever comes in his mind, so that he has adopted a straightforward narration with the representations of folk stories. And where does this does our Chinua Achebe write or adopt a straightforward narration is that in his folk stories. Especially in his folk stories, our Chinua Achebe goes on narrating his experiences that he has seen around him, is depicted in his folk stories and proverbs as well. He has composed many proverbs in his career and oratory. He has addressed many people who has gathered before him, which means he has produced numerous of oratories before audience, before the group of audience. That's what we call oratory, in front of the people who have gathered before him. Our Chinua Achebe has addressed his people who have gathered before him. He also published a number of short stories in his career. Our Chinua Achebe has produced numerous collections of short stories in his career and children books as well. Children's books were also composed by our Chinua Achebe. Essays collections and essays collections were also written by our Chinua Achebe. Some of his books are Things Fall Apart, Arrow of God, No Longer at His Enemy of the People, and Girls at War, or the greatest works of our Chinua Achebe ever composed by him. These were the literary works which have brought our Chinua Achebe name and fame throughout his life. This is what we see in terms of the biography of Chinua Achebe. Students, let us move on to the manuscript of the unit titled The Water. Here, what do we see is that our Chinua Achebe explores his idea as to the voting system, especially in the democracy. Taking our view onto the democracy, the system of voting is a very significant one. Why? Because is that people of any community or people of any country can give their vote or can exercise their vote on the day of election to represent or to elect their representatives to administrate them, only with the purpose of administrating them. The people who reside in a boundary of a country exercise their power or give their vote to their representatives to elect them, only to reign them, or we can say only to administer them. So that the system of voting in any democratic country plays a significant role, so that it becomes more important in our democratic system. In the case of this Nigeria, there are elections held, as it is a democratic country. In that country, as it was observed by Chinua Achebe, he in this story, by writing this story, by writing this story, the voter Chinua Achebe explores his idea after having seen the elections being held at Nigeria. What does he say is that the elections which are held in that country have lost their sanctity. Why? Because is it the representatives who are being elected by their citizens, they wouldn't do anything in the favor of, in the welfare of his or her people in his or her constituency. They wouldn't do anything, but rather they could do everything for the sake of their own. So that is what he has observed in Nigeria. So that he has written this author, as he has seen that elections which are held in that Nigeria. Here, what does he say is that we the students, as this is as this unit is given to us to see, we can get to see some themes in this present context of this unit. They are corruption, greediness, loyalty, money, power, and what we call pliance or obedience. These are the certain themes or ideas that we can get to see entire throughout this unit. Let's see, students, how the story is narrated, taking this unit from the girls, from one of the works of our Chinua Achebe named Girls at War. This story is narrated by an unknown narrator. The name of the narrator is not given here. This is narrated using third person narration. Let's see what we get to see over here. Rufus Okeke Roof for short was a very popular man in his village. The main character, or we can say protagonist in a sense, main character around which the whole story centers. Here, the main character of this story is Rufus Okeke. It is the name of a person who is the main character or role of this story. Roof for short, in short, or in another sense, in brief, or in another word we can say in concise. We, or the people of Umofia, used to call him as Roof. In short, using only few words, few letters, the people of Umofia used to call him as Roof instead of calling him as Rufus Okeke. He is called as Roof. It is the name being given by the people of that Umofia. This is how he is known by this name, Roof. Was a very popular man in his village. The name of the village that is given in this water is Umofia, is the name of the village found in this water. All the actions and courses that are seen in the present context of this story are found in a village called it as Umofia. Umofia is a village located in the country of Nigeria. He was a popular man. Roof was a popular man. He was greatly acclaimed or admired by many villagers in Umofia. He was very remarkable. He was known to everyone in that village. He got popularity among all the villagers of that Umofia in his own village. That is what we see in the very first line. This is how this play opens up with the description of our Rufus Okeke. He was a very popular man as he was greatly acclaimed. Many villagers of Umofia were fond on our Rufus Okeke. They had shown their affection over our Rufus Okeke, although the villagers didn't explain it in so many words. They had so much of love. All the villagers had been thankful towards our Roof. Why? Because is that they had been backed up by our Rufus Okeke. They were given much assistance by him. Here, before going through this, I will let you people to know a fact, that is the people of Umofia, especially the people of many countries all across Europe, were naive people. They were innocent people. They didn't know how to write and read. They were ignorant people. They didn't know what happened around them. Such people were found in the regions of Africa, all across Africa. These villagers, they didn't explain the popularity of our Rufus Okeke using many words. The people of Umofia, they didn't express their thankfulness or gratitude using their words. You imagine yourself when you are helped by anyone else or by any one of your companions, you usually admire your friend or companion using your verbal words. But in the case of our Umofian villagers, they didn't acclaim or admire our Rufus Okeke using many words, unlike us. They didn't explain the popularity of our Rufus Okeke. Instead, what they did is that they had simply shown their gratitude towards Ruth. Ruth's popularity was a measure of their gratitude to an energetic young man. Among all the villagers of Umofia, Ruth was the one who was an energetic young man who was popular among the villagers. His popularity was measured. His popularity was taken into consideration. How was it taken into consideration? Is it all the villagers had shown their gratitude in a sense, thankfulness, the feeling of thankfulness. All the Umofian villagers had shown their thankfulness or gratitude towards our young and energetic man. They had simply shown their gratitude or thankfulness towards our young and energetic Rufus Okeke instead of using verbal verbal expressions. They didn't use the verbal expression. Instead, what they did is that they simply showed their gratitude or thankfulness at our roof. Unlike most of his fellow nowadays. Nowadays, what happened in that Umofian village is that our Rufus Wakeke was not like many of his companions. He was totally different from his companions. He was not like many of his companions. That's what our Chinua Achebe says here. Unlike most of his fellows nowadays, he was totally different from from of his companions. He hadn't abandoned the village in order to seek work or any work in the towns. What happened in the village of Umofia is that many of Rufus Okeke's companions had left their village, that is Umofia, in order to seek work, in order to find job, with the intent of searching job. Many of Rufus Okeke's friends had left their job in quest of job to settle in their life. Many of his friends abandoned or left their own village, that is Umofia, in order to seek work or find any job in the towns. Especially jobs are seen or available especially in the towns. Even today, surrounding you people or around you people, many of your brothers and sisters might go to cities in order to find job. That is what happened in the village of Umofia. But our Rufus Okeke didn't leave his own village in searching for a job. He remained in his own village in order to provide his people much needed guidance, in order to instill knowledge that is fully required for his own villagers. And Roof was not a village lout either. Lout in a sense, he was not a stupid person, we can say. A slob, Gamara, what we call it in Kannada. Roof was not a village lout either. Halli Gamara, what we call it in Kannada, village lout. Rufus Wakeke, he was not such a village lout. He came to know many things, what was happening around him. He was very knowledgeable man. He he manipulates everyone around him. He can take control of everyone all around him. He uses many tactics to enchant anyone. He, uh, he was such a knowledgeable man. Everyone knew how he had spent 2 years as a bicycle repairers apprentice in Port Orchard. Students, what do we see is that our Rufus Okeke, he was a very knowledgeable man and he worked as a new learner to learn how to repair bicycle in Port Orchard. Port Orchard is the name of a place, or we can say a city, where Rufus Okeke had gone to learn how to repair bicycle. Everyone knew, every villager of Umofia knew the fact. They were aware of the fact. What was that fact is that he had spent 2 years in the city of Port Orchard. Roof had spent living his life for nearly 2 years as a bicycle repairer's apprentice. Apprentice, what do you people mean by apprentice? Apprentice means learner, a new learner. He wanted to learn how to repair a bicycle, so that he had gone to a city, named it as Port Harcourt, to learn how to repair a bicycle. So that our Rufus Okeke spent his life living all alone for 2 years as a bicycle repairer's apprentice, which means as a new learner how to repair a bicycle in Port Orchard. Every villager of Umofia knew about this fact and had given up of his own free will a bright future to return to his people. What our Rufus Okeke or Roof did is that he had given up everything for his people, even his bright future. If our Rufus Okeke had continued working in Port Orchard as a bicycle repairer's apprentice, he would have got everything in his life. The things would have been great difference rather than he had got today. He had left everything in his life for the sake of his people. Why? Because is that, as I told you in the initial stages of this story, that the people of this Umofia were too naive, were too innocent people. They didn't know what was happening around them. They didn't know, they couldn't know how to read and write. They were totally ignorant people. So that our Rufus Okeke, as he was much educated, as he gained access to the things that were happening all around him, he had given up even of his bright future. Even he left his bright future. If he continued learning as a bicycle repairer's apprentice, he would have got everything. He would have a bright future. But what he did? Instead, he left his bright future to return to his people. By leaving his profession, that is a bicycle repairer's apprentice, he returned to his village, that is Umofia, for the sake of his people, wanted to guide them in this troubled situation and guide them in these difficult times. What are the difficult times over here is that the people of that Umofian village are facing many difficult times. That is, the people are caught in between the Westerner and traditional values. They had been left with many problems. That is, the impact of Europeans was still on the people of Umofia, so that they were haunted by the Westerners psychologically, and they didn't know how to read and write, so that they were totally ignorant and naive people. That was the difficult time that the entire villagers had faced ever, so that they needed a complete guidance to direct them which way they should choose to lead their life forward. So that our Rufus Okeke came back to his own village by taking him out of the city, Port Orchard, to join his people only to guide them by leaving his own bright future. You remember this point, students. By guiding his people, to guide his people, by living his bright future, he had come to his own village. Not that Umofia needed a lot of guidance. At this moment, not only the people of Umofia needed or required guidance, but even the surrounding villages of Umofia needed or required much guidance from our Rufus Okeke. They were caught in that situation. They were in a dilemma to adopt the ways that they confronted, which they should choose. The village already belonged in Masai to the People's Alliance Party. As the title of this story suggests us, the story is all about the politics. In terms of this politics, the village of Umofia had a political party, that is People's Alliance Party. In short, it was called as PAP. The entire village already belonged. All the villagers, all the people of Umofia belonged in Masai to the People Alliance Party. In Masai, what do people in Masai is that as a group, as a whole, the entire villagers as a whole, being together, they supported People's Alliance Party. Entire village backed up People's Alliance Party. That's what we call NMSA. All the villagers supported this political party, that's People's Alliance Party. Its most illustrious son, illustrious in a sense, most widely known. There is a person who leads this People's Alliance Party is none other than Marcus Ibe. Its most illustrious son, Chief the Honorable Ibe. Here, what do we get to see is that the most illustrious son, Marcus Ibe, was the illustrious son, which means he was widely known in his locality. He was known to everyone. Each villagers of Umofia knew about this political leader, that is Marcus Ibe. He was such an illustrious son of the village of Umofia, Chief Honorable Minister. Our Marcus Ibe was given a title, that is Chief the Honorable, after being appointed as the Minister of Culture in the outgoing election. Marcus Ibe was given a title, that is Chief the Honorable. Here you need to understand one thing, that is Chief the Honorable is the title given to Marcus Ibe as a respective word, respective title in a sense. Chief the Honorable Marcus Ibe is a political leader of People's Alliance Party, which our villagers supported a lot. What was Marcus Ibe is that he was the Minister of Culture in the outgoing government. Before 5 years, or we can say 5 years ago, there was an election which our Marcus Ibe was elected in and was designated as a Minister of Culture. He was designated, or we can say he was elected as the Minister of Culture in the outgoing government when it was formed. In the outgoing government, when it was formed by the government, our Marcus Ibe was appointed or elected as the Minister of culture, Samskritika Sachiva, what we call it in Kannada, and which was pretty certain to be the incoming one as well. Here, a satirical statement is given by our Chinua Achebe. The whole story is full of satirical statements provided by our Chinua Achebe. It was pretty certain, it was obvious, it was clear. What was made clear is that the entire village of Umofia was certain with the belief that in the upcoming election as well, this Marcus Ibe would be elected and become as a minister of culture in the coming election. Already our Marcus Ibe had spent his 5 years of time during which he did nothing. He had brought no development at all in the village of Umofia, though the people had belief in them. The villagers of Umofia had much belief in them that is in the coming election as well, Marcus Abbey would be elected as a minister. This is what was pretty certain or pretty obvious, or we can say it was pretty made clear by the villagers of Umofia in the coming election as well, he would be again appointed. Nobody doubted. Nobody doubted that the honorable minister would be elected in his constituency. Constituency, it is an area of land where the people of Umofia exercise their power on the day of election. Nobody doubted, no one had doubt about this, that the honorable Marcus Abbey, the honorable minister who was appointed as a minister of culture, would be elected in his constituency, in his area of voting. There was no doubt at all in the minds of the people of this Umofia that he would be elected. No doubt at all. All of them were pretty certain or pretty sure that he would again be elected in the coming election as well, if it takes place in the constituency where Marcus Abbey stands as a participant before his oppositional party. Oppositional party to him was like proverbial fly trying to move a dunghill. Here, another satirical statement is given by the author of this story, that is the oppositional party to our Marcus Abbey it looks like a proverbial fly trying to move a dunghill. Dunghill, it means it looks like a garbage where dust is put, where dust is made all together, where dust is grouped together. Oppositional party to our Marcus Abbey is like a proverbial fly trying to move a dunghill. To carry out or to take a dunghill from one place to another is a very easy task. That's what we call ತಿಪ್ಪೆ ಇನ್ ಕನ್ನಡ. ಅದನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಸ್ಥಳದಿಂದ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸ್ಥಳಕ್ಕೆ ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಸುಲಭವಾದಂಥ ಕೆಲಸ. ಹಾಗೆಯೇ ಆಪೋಸಿಷನ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಿ ಉಮೋಫಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಅಸ್ತಿತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿತ್ತೋ ಅದನ್ನು ಸೋಲಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ಕೂಡ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಸ್ ಅ ಸೇಮ್ ಆಸ್ ದಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೂವಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ಅ ಡಂಗಿಲ್. ಅದನ್ನು ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದಷ್ಟೇ ಸುಲಭ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಮಾರ್ಕಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ಈ ವಾಸ್ ಸಚ್ ಅ ಡಾಮಿನೆಂಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್. ಈ ಗೇನ್ಡ್ ಸಚ್ ಅ ಪೊಸಿಷನ್ in the heart of the people of that Umofia. In a sense, we can understand this. It would have been ridiculous enough without coming as it did now from a complete non-entity. It would have been ridiculous enough. Here, what do we get to see is that still yet too, the people of Umofia face or confront the coming election. They do not get the coming election now, but they had already left the previous election behind them. It would have been ridiculous in a sense which brings us a laughter in a humorous way, we can say. Enough without coming ದಿ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಎಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಎಟ್ ಟು ಕಮ್, ಇನ್ನೂ ಕೂಡ ಎಲೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಬರಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ. ಆದರೂ ಕೂಡ ದ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದಟ್ ಉಮೋಫಿಯಾ predict that in the upcoming election as well, Honorable Marcus Abe would be appointed as the minister. It brings us ridiculous in a humorous way or laugher on our face. That's what we call satirical comment or satirical statement is given here. A complete non-entity in a sense, a complete what we call non-existence. Still, the people of the Umofia can't get the coming election, though they managed to predict the winning of the coming election. That is, Minister of Culture who was appointed earlier 5 years ago would again be elected as the minister even in the coming election. This is the satirical statement given by our Chinua Achebe. As was to be expected, Roof was in the service of Honorable Minister for the coming election. The coming election was approaching the people of Umofia, as was to be expected. As I told you people earlier that Rufus Okeke was the main character of this story. It was expected that Rufus Okeke was in the service of Honorable Marcus Ibe in the coming election. The election was approaching the people of that Umofia, as the people of Umofia were facing the coming as they are inviting the coming election before them. Rufus Okeke, as it was expected by the people of that Umofia, he provided his service, is a much needed service to the honorable minister, that was Marcus Ibe. Much needed service of Roof was given to the minister, that was Marcus Ibe. He had become a real expert in the election campaigning at all levels. In many levels, the elections were held. Many levels are there. He had become a real expert. Our Rufus Okeke, when he entered into the politics supporting his honorable minister Marcus Ibe, he gained much expertness in him. He was a prolific man in the area of politics. He became a real expert in the area of politics in election campaigning. What was our Rufus Okeke is that he was a real expert in the area of conducting a campaign at the time of election. Our Rufus Okeke gained so much of expertness in him in conducting a campaign at the time of election at all the levels, whether it is a state, village level, while forming a local government, or it may be on national level. At all these forms of forming a government, our Rufus Okeke gained so much of knowledge or expertness in him, even at the village level, or while forming a government at the level of local or village level, and even at national level as well. He could tell the mood and temper of the electorate at any given time, whatever the time it was. Our Rufus Okeke could be able to tell the mood and temper. Our Rufus Okeke, how much was he knowledgeable is that he could even tell the mood. It was a status of the mind of the people. It was the status of the mind of the people. Even he could predict the mood and temper of the people of the villagers of that Umofia. He could predict even the mood, the mental status of the people of that Umofia could be told by Rufus Okeke. He was such a knowledgeable man. And temper of the people, of the electorate in a sense, it is a body of people who can put their or cast their vote to elect their representative. Even the temper and mood of the electorate could be predicted by our Rufus OKK. For instance, here we are given an instance or example to make us to understand how much our Rufus OKK expert is it. He had warned the minister month, months ago about the radical change that had come into thinking of Umofia since the last national election. Our Rufus OKK warned the Minister of Culture few months ago. Only a few months ago, our Rufus OKK warned the Minister of Culture, that is Marcus Abe. What was that What was that warning given by our Rufus OKK to his minister? Is it about the radical change? There was change that took place in the mindset of the people of that Umofia. That was the radical change, which means the basic change. There were some changes made up by the people of that Umofia in their mind. These radical or basic changes were made up in the minds of the people of that Umofia. These changes were caught by our Rufus OKK, and he told his minister about these basic changes that were made up in the minds of that people of that Umofia, had come into thinking of that Umofia, and these changes had come into existence in the thinking of the Umofian people. They had made up so much of changes in their mindset in the coming election. Since the last election, these people brought many changes since the last election, as they got nothing improvement in their village, so that they made up their mind, having so much of changes in their mindset. This is what do we see in this present paragraph. The villagers had 5 years of time in which to see how quickly and plentifully politics brought wealth, chieftaincy titles, doctorate degrees, and other honors, some of which, like the last, had still to be explained satisfactorily to them. For in their naivety, they still expected a doctor to be able to heal the sick. All the villagers of Umofia had spent 5 years of time to see. They had consumed all through the 5 years. The villagers of Umofia observed the administration of Marcus Ibe. When the politics entered into their village, all these villagers witnessed the administration of Marcus Ibe. What they had seen is that how quickly and plentifully politics brought wealth. After being appointed by the people of this Umofia, Marcus Ibe had to bring many developments in his own village. Instead of bringing many developments in his own village, he did nothing to them. He had not brought any development in his village. So that these 5 years were seen by the villagers of that Umofia to see how quickly and plentifully or enormously or abundantly, we can say, politics brought wealth. Politics, which our Marcus Ibe was appointed as a minister of culture in, brought wealth. It was keenly observed by the villagers of Umofia. They had taken 5 years of time how politics, or we can say in another word, how Marcus Ibe brought plentifully or abundantly wealth. As he had been appointed by the villagers of Umofia, he had to bring wealth to his village. Instead, he brought nothing else. And the chieftaincy titles, especially to the kings of that Nigerian country, the chieftaincy titles were given to them. And for the people who have achieved something a lot, these chieftaincy titles are given or provided in the continent of Nigeria. In the case of this Marcus Ibe, or the politics that existed in the area of the village of that Umofia, chieftaincy titles are also provided, but all the chieftaincy titles were given only to Marcus Ibe. Doctorate degrees were also given to Marcus Ibe instead of giving them to the people of that Umofia, and other honors were also given to Marcus Ibe as he was appointed as a minister of culture, some of which, like the lost, had still to be explained satisfactorily to them. But the people of the Umofia were never ever satisfied with what they had. They had nothing else. They still to be explained satisfactorily to them. They didn't have anything in them. They were the poverty stricken people. Many people were poverty stricken people. They had so much of poverty in them, and along with it they had no satisfactory elements in them. For in their naivety in the sense, innocence, they were, I told you people earlier that many villagers of that Umofia were innocent. They were ignorant people, they couldn't read and write, so they still expected a doctor. They expected our Marcus Ibe in the form of a doctor. They wanted to see Marcus Ibe as a doctor who could who could heal a sick. Which means here Marcus Ibe has been compared to a doctor who could heal or cure the sick of a diseased man. In the same manner, these people of Umofia were stricken with a disease or an illness, so that they expected a doctor from the form of in the form of a doctor. They expected our Marcus Ibe in the form of a doctor, so that they uh, so that they would get cured their illness, as they got nothing from him. Anyhow, these honors and benefits had come so readily to the man to whom they had given their votes free of charge 5 years ago. What happened 5 years earlier, 5 years ago, in the outgoing government, when Marcus Ibe was elected as the Minister of Culture, is that all these people of Umofia had provided their oath, or we can say they cost their oath free of cost, free of charge 5 years ago. They took no charge at all, they took no money from the hand of Marcus Ibe, with the belief that they would get something from the hand of Marcus Ibe, so that they got nothing from this Marcus Ibe, but everything was given to him. Even uh, chieftaincy titles, doctorate degrees, wealth, and other honors were given only to Marcus Ibe. All the benefits and beneficiaries and honors were given to Marcus Ibe instead of giving them to the people of that Umofia. But what the people did is that they had provided their votes free of cost 5 years ago to bring Marcus Ibe into fore. They were now ready to try it in a different way. Coming election was approaching them, so that they made up their mind that they must find another way in which they shouldn't cost or put their vote free of charge, as they did it earlier, or we can say 5 years ago. They wanted to try in the coming election in a very different way. This is what we see in this present paragraph. And here their point was that the Other day, Marcus Abe was not a too successful mission school teacher. What we see is that their point, the people of that Umofia's point was that they were aware that they came to know the fact that only the other day, only a few years ago, what was Marcus Abe by profession is that he was not a successful mission school teacher. Before entering into the politics, Chief the Marcus Abe, Chief the Honorable Marcus Abe, as he was now today, he was earlier before coming into this election, he was a school teacher, but he was not successful in his career. He lost his dignity being a school teacher. He has lost his worth as a school teacher. Then politics had come to their village, and later, as he lost his name being a school teacher, he what happened in that village is that politics entered. Politics had come to their village. Into the village of this Umofia, politics got entered into this village. He had wisely joined up. Marcus Abe used his tactics and used his what we call genuine power and the wisdom that he had in him. He wisely joined the politics. He got entered into the politics using his tactics, or we can say using his what we call using his power that he had in his hand, and some said just in time to avoid the imminent dismissal arising from a female teacher's complaint. At the time when he was a school teacher, there was a case against Marcus Abe. What was is that some people of that Umofia said that just in time to avoid the imminent dismissal, the dismissal was approaching our Marcus Abe at the time when he was a school teacher, only to avoid the dismissal arising from a female teacher's complaint. At the time when he was a school teacher, a female teacher filed a complaint against our Marcus Abe. At that time, only to avoid female teacher's complaint, Marcus Abe, only to escape from these circumstances, he had wisely joined up the politics. Today, he was Chief the Honorable. After being appointed as the Minister of Culture, he was given a title that is the Chief the Honorable. After being appointed as the Minister of Culture, he had two long cars and just had built himself the biggest house anyone had seen in these parts. After being appointed as the Minister of Culture, he owned many things. He possessed many things around him. He had two long cars. He bought two enormous cars in him. He owned two long cars in him and just had built himself the biggest house, enormous house. It looked like a mansion. Was built by our Marcus Abe. He did nothing to his people. He brought nothing development in his village. Instead of providing all the benefits and necessities of the life of the people of that Umofia, he brought many titles, chieftaincy titles, doctorate degrees, honors, wealth onto him only. He accumulated many things in him. He built the enormous and biggest house for himself only, that anyone had hardly seen around him or her. In these parts, no one could see such an enormous house around him. But let it be said that none of these successes had gone to Marcus's head as they might. And here, what do we see is that And another satirical statement is provided by our Chinua Achebe, that is, none of the successes that our Marcus Ibe got today had gone to Marcus Ibe's head. None success that he got today, even the car that he had got, that he bought, and the enormous house which looked like a mansion, all of them had not gone to the Marcus's head, but instead they had gone to the head of the peoples as they were given by them, as they provided their votes free of cost 5 years ago. He remained devoted to his people, but in contrasting nature, Marcus Ibe, he used his tactics as he was a politician. Politicians are famous for using their tactics and shrewdness. In the same way, Marcus Ibe used his shrewdness. Shrewdness is a political term, especially related to politics. He remained in his own village. He stayed in his own village, devoting to his people, which means Marcus Ibe, what we call, he was a noble person, which means he pretended as if he was a noble person, as if he was a devoted person to his people of that Umofia. Whenever he could, whenever it was possible, whenever uh, the things made our Marcus Ibe, he left the good things of the capital. You draw underline below the words of below the phrasal words of good things of the capital. Here, this phrasal words represent phrasal words represents the privileges and benefits that are available in the cities. Understood? Only the benefits are available in the cities than the villagers, so that he left many good things or privileges that were available in the cities. He remained loyal to his people. This is a very contradictory nature of the Marcus Ibe. Though he had not brought anything to his people and returned to his village, which had neither running water nor electricity. Marcus Ibe left the city's life. He left the city and came back to the village of Umofia, and he started living his life in that village Umofia, which had neither running water nor electricity. This Umofian village had no basic needs or basic requirements in it. Even the village had no facility of running water nor electricity. It had it had neither running water nor electricity. To such a village, this Marcus Ibe had come to the village, although he had lately installed a private plant to supply electricity to his new house. Has he built a new house for himself? He lately installed, or we can say, he lately established a private plant. Private plant, in a sense, it is a machinery. Industrial machinery was established by Marcus Ibe only to provide his house with electricity. He supplied the electricity to his new house instead of providing the villagers. He knew the source of his good fortune. He knew everything. He was a very genuine man. He used tactics. He used shrewdness, which politics could use. He knew the source of his good fortune. He came to know the source or roots of his destiny, or what we call fortune. Unlike the little bird who ate, he was here. A comparison has been made by Chinua Achebe. That is, unlike the little bird, our Marcus Ibe was not a little bird. Always a little bird, what it does is that it eats something after consuming the grains What it does is that it even drinks the water, and it goes on challenging itself, it goes on challenging its own soul. After satisfying it its needs and requirements, after consuming the grains itself, it goes on challenging itself. But our Rufus Okeke, he had never done such a work. He remained loyal and he remained devoted to his people. He stuck on himself to live his life in his village, in this village of Umofia, though he provided no privileges at all to his people. Marcus had christened his new house Umofia mansions in honor of his village, only to provide an honor and dignity to his village, that is Umofia. He had christened to his new house using Umofia mansions. We already got to know that he had built enormous, which looked like a mansion. Here Marcus Ibe, he christened in a sense, he gave a name to his new house, that is Umofia mansions. What was the name given to the new house which was built by Marcus Ibe? Was that Umofia mansions. Taking the name of the village of that Umofia, he added the name of that village, that is Umofia. Taking the name of that Umofian village, he added all along with this mansion. He put Umofia mansions as the name of his house, only to honor or what we call respect to his village. And he had slaughtered in a sense, cut the head of the animals, head of the animals. He had cut the head of the 5 bulls. Marcus Ibe slaughtered or killed, we can say killed. Marcus Ibe killed 5 bulls and countless of goats, only to entertain the people on the day it was opened by Archbishop. Archbishop is the main clergy, or is the main priest among all the priests. Here in the church, countless of goats and 5 bulls were killed by Marcus Ibe, only to feed the people who visited the banquet which was arranged by our Marcus Ibe, only to entertain the people of Umofia, only to attract the people of that Umofia, only to grab the words of that Umofia. This Marcus Ibe killed countless of goats and 5 bulls, only to feed the people of that Umofia when his new house was opened by the main priest of the church, whom we used to call as Archbishop. Students, let us stop over here. The rest part of this unit will be dealt in our next class. I thank you all for listening to me all through the way. Thank you.